Welcome back. The government, through the command center, has set in motion a plan to reopen the economy on a phased basis. It includes full reopening of the local economy under health guidelines, relaxing of the national curfew, provision for national exams, and reopening of the airports and more. The framework for reopening was shared at a national consultation on Friday, the 15th of May. The government is charting St. Lucia's road to recovery, and plans are being shared for the measured and phased approach to reopening the economy. According to the team at the national consultation on Friday, the goal is for large stimulation of the private sector and the economy by way of the reopening of the travel and tourism sector, and with a focus for a more resilient healthcare system. Delivery Unit Director Sharon Gardner-Hippolyte made the announcements of the new measures and reopenings.
We're looking at allowing for our economy internally to be able to operationalize and to be able to have all of our sectors operating. Some of them at different levels, depending on the type of operation that is in effect. Our curfew, we're looking to reduce it. We are hoping to have domestic and travel and international travel resume, and also allowing again for provisions for national examination. With respect to the tourism sector, we are going to be allowing for our airports to open. Now, what I need for everybody to appreciate is those are our goals, those are our aspirations, and we have to work towards a goal and an aspiration.
Physical distancing protocols will remain in place and gatherings will be limited, but there will be reopening of some soft social sectors. Gardner-Hippolyte says the new normal will be very different from life pre-COVID-19. People will have no choice but to modify their lifestyles.
What is going to be our new normal? It certainly is not going to be life as we imagined it prior to COVID, but everybody has to appreciate in every single sector it is going to be radically different. Our international travel can resume, but with very strict protocols. Social, public must accept and adhere to the new norms. Relation to school, again, we are allowing for national examinations, and with respect to tourism, the full recovery and reopening, but again, strict adherence to protocols.
She explained that all phased reopening would cease if there are large increases in community spread of COVID-19 and if these cases are traced to entry into our borders.
Making sure that our health sector is able to withstand any shock, monitoring for any deficiencies, and if we had 30 cases in cluster, then this would be an automatic trigger for us to be able to revert.
The Prime Minister has explained that the 5-phase strategic reopening focuses on health, safety, and the general well-being of the public and has taken into account advice from public health experts and feedback from various stakeholders. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Donalyn Vite, presented a guide which intends to sensitize the public and travelers on the protocols that have been put in place to ensure a safe reopening of the tourism sector. She says the Ministry of Tourism continues to work with stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health, to ensure that the reopening is a smooth and safe process.
The Ministry of Tourism has rolled out its first public outline of what a resumption of tourism activity would look like in the wake of a viral pandemic. This came in the form of the Safety Protocols Guide, which was presented by Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, Donalyn Vite, during the national consultation on framework to reopen St. Lucia's Society. Vite says this instrument came following a critical assessment of the various stages of a tourism journey. Enforcement of its protocols will see a limitation placed on the number of services made available in the tourism product.
Within that framework of looking at the resumption of tourism activity in St. Lucia, there are baby steps. It is important to note that we have identified a 2-phase approach, with the first phase being a test piece for the first baby item here. So the idea is to limit the various services within the tourism industry to focus on formal accommodation, tourism taxi, as well as the day boat charters for some very limited excursions. The other aspects of phase one for the tourism resumption would be that we need to have a dedicated team to assist the Ministry of Health in looking at inspections and adherence to protocols.
She underscored that an intensive education drive will accompany these protocols to ensure that persons employed in the tourism sector are able to operate safely when dealing with visitors.
There is a very strong training and communication plan that will go behind protocols and ensuring that the public is informed of the various activities going on and the progress to date.
Vite says the Ministry of Tourism has already begun to sensitize various stakeholders on these new protocols, with special attention given to the hotel sector. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
The results for a batch of 59 samples of COVID-19 tests were received on the 15th of May, and all of these 59 samples tested negative. No positive results were received within the batch. The Ministry of Health says it is encouraged by the number of people who are experiencing flu-like symptoms and are promptly seeking the care within respiratory clinics. The ministry says this positive health-seeking behavior by citizens is one of the important actions that has helped in being effective at managing COVID-19. Officials remind everyone that a very clear pathway to care has been established in the event someone is experiencing respiratory illness. This includes the availability of the 311 hotline as well as the telemedicine facility through which physicians can be accessed. The community respiratory clinics and the respiratory care at Victoria and St. Jude hospitals continue to be available as walk-in services. All of these services are free to users. In other news, Civil Aviation Minister Guy Joseph has responded to the downgrade of ECA from Category 1 to Category 2. The minister says while the downgrade will not immediately affect the island, he says the St. Lucian government is doing all in its power to ensure that the issues with the Aviation Association are resolved in a timely manner.
Civil Aviation Minister Guy Joseph on Friday assured the public that one's ability to travel by air would not be affected by ECA's recent downgrade.
I want to assure all the people of St. Lucia, especially, that the change from a Category 1 to a Category 2 will not at this present time impact the ability to fly within the region or to any international destination.
Minister Joseph explained the only possible effect the downgrade could possibly have on the country at this juncture is that new airlines may not be allowed to commence new services in any ECA-represented country.
The biggest problem that it poses for us is in relation to if an airline from St. Lucia wants to fly to a U.S. territory or any airline from any of the countries represented by ECA, if an airline is to start a new service to a U.S. destination, that would not be permitted. But any service that is already being provided, so for example, if Liat is already going to St. Croix or already going to Puerto Rico, that is not going to be impacted.
He asserted that the government has always expressed its disapproval of the operational inefficiencies with the Aviation Authority.
As a government in St. Lucia, we have over the last couple of years expressed our concerns with what is happening at ECA and how it has operated. I did not think that it needed to get to that point for us to be able to address the concerns. And there are a number of concerns. Some of them are legislative in nature. I know that St. Lucia had some regulations to bring up to date, which we have brought in.
The minister says all comments made by the government on finding an alternative aviation authority was not them being brash, but rather ensuring the country's interest was put first. He says, while St. Lucia has not decided to leave the association, it is wise to consider other options given the limited number of airlines operating under ECA. He suggested that a possible solution to the recurring issues would be a change in ECA's governance.
If we are going to keep the same people there all the time, who continue not to adhere to the request of the countries, because ECA is not the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, is not a country of itself. St. Lucia still has right to its airspace. We have just delegated that responsibility to ECA as part, so it grants the permission on behalf of each individual country based on what we are looking for.
Joseph revealed that St. Lucia and many other countries represented by the authority have not been given a listening ear over the past few years, and as such, the government is awaiting legitimate reasons as to why the FAA would downgrade the authority, so reasonable decisions could be arrived at moving forward. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzaga.
Meanwhile, former Chief Air Services negotiator Earl Huntley is also weighing in on the ECA downgrading. In his former capacity, he negotiated a number of international agreements under which airlines entered St. Lucia from various destinations. He says the blame being apportioned to ECA is unfounded and unjustifiable.
The ECA Secretariat in Antigua services the international civil aviation requirements of those member states, which are all members of the International Civil Aviation Organization based in Montreal, ICAO. From time to time, ICAO issues regulations which its member states must observe by putting them into law, by passing legislation to make these mandatory for the countries. What happened in this case is that ICAO had issued a number of regulations and the member states of ECA had not passed those regulations. They had not legislated them.
Huntley remains adamant that it is the governments of member states of ECA who are to blame for the downgrading and not the ECA Secretariat. You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more coming up after the break.